Good afternoon, all. Welcome to Carrow Road for what was Dean Smith's unveiling. I will just pan the camera around quickly. Paddy's with me, but I don't know if you can make that out really. But Dean Smith, Stuart Webber over there taking photos with the photographers. We've just finished the main media conference where Dean was holding up the shirt and all the usual sort of stuff. But Pad, just to kick off, what was your overall impression of Dean Smith's sort of first performance, as it were?
Very relaxed. Yeah, no, he was. I think he's done a few of these in his time. Obviously, Villa, relatively in the Midlands, is a very big club media profile wise. So I don't think he was phased when he walked into flash bulbs and quite a lot of media. I think I was told there was 25 external media here today. So busier than I've seen it for quite some time, and actually unusual. Now she's popped into bed because that's the first time in a long while we've actually been in the Carrow Road press room. You know, obviously the times we've lived through, we're normally up that direction doing it on Zoom with Daniel Farker, formerly of the parish. So that was a bit surreal as well to be back in an old style setting. But quite a composed performance. Batted away the sort of questions you would have expected about Gilmour and Cantwell and January spending plans. Obviously Stuart Webber alongside him, I liked the way he'd already slipped into Wii mode when he was talking about Norwich, Dean Smith, and some very interesting, revealing stuff about the process the last 7 days. But also for me, more importantly, that he'd had a chance to look at 4 or 5 of Norwich's games while he was out in New York visiting his son. And so, in other words, he's already in his head, despite today being the official unveiling. He's already planning for what he hopes is keeping Norwich up. And the most interesting line that I wasn't aware of, never been relegated as a head coach. So long may that record continue.
Absolutely. There were lots of nice lines. Of course, we'll get them all worked up for you. PinkUn.com this afternoon, papers tomorrow. Stuart Webber used the word psychopath, which I don't think we would have been expecting. But he was talking about having to get rid of Daniel Farker, essentially, which he said you'd be a psychopath if you enjoyed those sort of conversations, talking about how that was difficult, but how they'd always be friends as well. So that's a nice line to hear. But in terms of Smith and on-pitch things, if we start there, we heard this line repeated quite a few times, didn't we, that we've got to be harder to beat.
Yeah, I think in answer to what's the first task you've got with this squad, it was stop conceding goals. So in that regard, he's trying to take it on from where Daniel was post-Watford down here, obviously, when the wheels came off in a big way. And it was very clear that in Daniel's own mind, they had to be far better without the ball. And ultimately, if that's where his headspace is at, then you'd look for them to continue building on where they left off against Brentford in terms of, conceded 1 that day, and with Bamidele and Gibson, who were very solid. And but he did also caveat that with, of course, inevitably 1 win in 11 league games would underscore that they haven't done enough at the top end of the pitch. So I think while he might tilt towards defensive resolution, I think also he's very clear. And funnily enough, I asked him as well, what do you make of the attacking players you've got here? And he seemed to be very happy with some of the attacking armoury at his disposal. Actually put him on the spot about Rashica, who was linked to Villa before, and he openly admitted that the previous sporting director at Villa was very, very keen on him, and that deal almost got done the summer before he came into Norwich. So there's a player straight away he knows all about. He was good on Gilmour as well. He said John McGinn had raved about him when he'd come back from Scotland duty. So it sounds like Gilmour may be getting brought in from the cold, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Rashica start down here on Saturday as well. So yeah, it sounds like he knows what he's got to work with, and ultimately you can only take it at what he said. He feels there's enough quality in the squad, and I thought it was quite revealing that he said he feels the quality's there, but they haven't produced the results to match that quality. So ultimately, that's probably at the door of Daniel and his coaching staff, that he feels, Dean Smith and Craig Shakespeare, that they haven't got the most out of this group of players, rather than there's a lack of quality.
Yeah, there was lots of sort of nice colour, I suppose you'd say. We were talking about New York, obviously, weren't we? Dean explained that basically after he'd left the Villa job, that his wife had said it was a non-negotiable, didn't she, in terms of, because they hadn't seen their son for 18 months, so they had it scheduled in, and that was the plan. They were going to be out there. But he said he was watching games on the plane, didn't he? He's obviously well up to speed now. You may well have already seen the photos from within the dressing room, talking to ground handling, Christoph Zimmerman, while they're getting a bit of treatment and things like that. So shaky, that's what we seem to be calling Craig Shakespeare, isn't it? That was Stuart and Dean quite a bit. Confirmed that he's pretty much going to be working with the staff that is at the club already for the time being, isn't he? We'll see how that develops. And Yeah, in terms of, we didn't reflect too much, did we? We did talk a little bit about Lampard and Stewart sort of went through the process and all that kind of thing. But essentially, I think the thing that Stewart was really keen to talk about was just the strength of their relationship and how he just likes him. I think was pretty much his point, wasn't it?
Yeah, and ultimately he did confirm. I think it's a common secret that when Nick Stewart was at Huddersfield, they looked at Dean Smith as a potential candidate there. So the relationship has built from there. And for me, the takeaway line from Stewart on that aspect of this, what happened post Daniel at Brentford to getting to the point where Dean Smith was the candidate of choice. Stewart said, as soon as Sunday he gets dismissed by Villa, Stewart's ears pricked up and he was straight into Dean Smith's agent just to test the water. Would he fancy getting straight back in? And if so, what did he think of the Norwich opportunity? And then when they got the positive feedback from the agent initially, and then Dean Smith himself, as Stewart said, it was almost decision made. And then it was just ironing out the finer details before he, as he said, went off for his family trip to the US. Which is pretty much what we've reported subsequently. That once, which wasn't the case, of course, we all know Saturday evening at Brentford, Daniel was fired. Dean Smith's still in post. So, things would have turned out very differently if Dean Smith was still in post, because I don't think he would have been leaving Villa to come to Norwich. So, where Stewart's head was probably out on Saturday evening, certainly wasn't the case maybe Sunday evening. Once Dean Smith was available, he was his number one candidate, and he did everything in his power to go and get him in the door. And it sounds like Dean was very receptive to that. There was, I tried to put him on the spot, given his Villa connections and how bruising that would have felt for him. Was there no sense that he wanted to maybe go and lick his wounds and take a bit of time out of the game? And that was quite an amusing line as well, because he'd obviously said that in, I think, his introductory club statement about he'd only been out of the game 4 months since he was 16. And somebody asked him what had he done in those 4 months, and he said he's got a bit of an OCD complex where he has to check the date on the ham in the fridge, and his wife is sick of it, sight of him trying to kick him out of the house. Very clearly, he's a man who loves football, wants to be involved with football, and as soon as the Norwich opportunity came round, he was loath to sort of turn it over. And as I say, 8 days, essentially, you can condense it down to 8 days from losing his job at Villa to officially being appointed as Norwich manager. And so 4 months and 8 days since the age of 16, and he's 50 now. That's not a bad innings for such a volatile industry.
Yeah, I quite like the line when he was asked about his connection with Villa, and he said, well, I've 30 years, I've only been at Villa for 3, so it's not like I've got a I'm not going to have trouble disconnecting from them because I'm sort of used to it. But various other lines, Stewart reaffirmed that Frank Lampard wasn't offered the job, and the logistics as well. He was asked about the timing of Daniel sacking and why it needed to be after the Brentford game, and he explained that logistically, because all the players would be scattering off basically from that night, that to give Daniel and the staff the opportunity to have that final meeting, that farewell, and get back to Colney as they did and say goodbye to each other, it needed to be then rather than Monday morning, because then it would become a lot more of a drawn out process, and they just needed to, they'd made the decision anyway, hadn't they? So they just needed to get it done. Just finally then, as it's this man's birthday as well, which I've just remembered. So what a treat for you.
Nowhere else I'd rather be, mate.
You don't spend enough time here. Hopefully you're getting a bit of cake at some point. But just finally, Cantwell and Gilmore, I mean, we put those questions to them, didn't we? Stewart again emphasised that they have the 1 year option on Todd's contract. But essentially, it felt to me like Dean Smith just laid down the gauntlet, didn't he, and said, you've got to impress us.
Yeah, I think very much and he did, and he was very quick to broaden it out to the whole squad need to do that. I think tomorrow is now his first proper day working with that group of players. And it's a clean slate under this manager and his assistant. On the Cantwell one, I thought also interestingly that Stewart threw in, because the whole thing that Daniel seemed to be intimating was that Todd wasn't able to train fully for a full week and put another week on top of that. Stewart confirmed today Todd's been training all through this international period, no issues at all. So very firmly back in the mix in the first team picture. And now it's whether, I think, a manager who quite likes him. I think that's safe to say, because he was linked to Villa in the past, as Rashica. I think those guys, if you're Todd Cantwell, or you're Miller Rashica, and even maybe Billy Gilmore, you're going to feel, clean slate. I've got an opportunity now, which maybe I wasn't going to get under Daniel Farker. And as far as, I think as Dean Smith is concerned, those guys now start from the same starting point as Timu Pukki or Grant Hanley or any of those guys who were playing far more regularly. And it's up to them. Ultimately, it's up to those individuals to prove to Dean Smith that they're good enough to be in this 11 starting against Southampton on Saturday. It's going to be really interesting. I mean, we'll obviously speak to Dean again Friday lunchtime.
48 hours.
Yeah, which will be more focused towards Southampton. But it'll be good to speak to him after he's worked, albeit probably only a session or two with these players, and just where he thinks Cantwell is relative to an 11 on Saturday, or even Gilmore, and maybe he might drop a few more hints. But it certainly sounded like Gilmore, Rashica and Cantwell are all three players he likes very much and are going to get an opportunity, I think, in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, and he intimated that he wasn't worried about scoring goals as well, didn't he? He said about, well, Pukki's just got 100 caps for Finland. Almost, I think scoring goals isn't really going to be a problem for us. It's about it coming throughout the team. Pointed out that Norman obviously got the goal last week. And stylistically as well, talked about the fact that he's not going to go too far away from, obviously he didn't say Farkable, but in terms of the style that they've been implementing in recent years, he said, well, we've recruited players who are good on the football, haven't we? So he's not going to now turn them into an Allardyce football team, is he? I think that's pretty safe to say. But that just kicks things off for you with a quick précis of what we've been listening to this afternoon. As I say, PinkUn.com this afternoon, papers tomorrow. We'll keep it flowing, PinkUn YouTube channel, and we will. Well, I guess it'll probably be on Friday that we'll catch up with you because it's all go, and then there's a game on Saturday, isn't there? But for now, thank you very much for joining.